My son called me crying from a place I didn't even know he'd been sent. His voice trembled over the line, 8 years old, terrified, whispering like someone was listening. "Dad, I thought you were dead. They said you left because I ruined everything." I was still in uniform, just off the transport plane from overseas, dust and blood still clinging to me. But in that moment, nothing felt more violent than those words. My name had been deleted from his world, my role as his father, erased like I never existed. While I was deployed risking my life for this country, someone had buried me in my son's heart, replaced truth with abandonment, and locked him away like a secret too inconvenient to love. That call shattered something in me I didn't know could still break. And right then, I made a promise. Whoever did this was going to see what a man with nothing left to lose is really capable of. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from all over the world. Your comments create a community where storytelling thrives, and we're so grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and prepare for a journey that will keep you hooked from start to finish. Let's get started. I was barely off the tarmac when the call came through. My boots were still caked in Afghan dust, the sun hadn't risen yet in New York, and I hadn't seen my son in over 6 months. I was supposed to be heading home to surprise him. That was the plan. I hadn't told anyone I was flying in early, wanted to catch him at the breakfast table, same way I used to. I'd even bought him that comic book he kept mentioning in his letters. For a minute, I was just a dad again. A dad coming home. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Wyoming area code. At first I ignored it, figured it was spam, but then it buzzed again. Same number. My gut, trained by too many years and too many deployments, told me to pick up. I tapped the screen. "Dad?" My heart punched my chest. "Caleb?" I stopped mid-step. "Where are you, buddy?" There was silence. Just breathing. Then a choked whisper. "They said you died. They said I ruined everything." I froze. The din of the airport fell away. Nothing around me made sense anymore. "I didn't mean to," he said, trembling. "I tried to be good. I swear, but Grandma said I'm a mistake, that I broke Mom. Please don't be mad." I couldn't speak, couldn't think. Then he added something that cut deeper than anything I'd faced in combat. "They took your name off everything. It's like you don't exist anymore. Even my last name changed." And just like that, my world collapsed. 36 hours later, I was back in New York. Alone. The base liaison had offered to send someone with me. I declined. This was personal. When I pulled up to the building that used to be my home, our home, I almost didn't recognize it. Everything had changed. The doormen were new. The security system didn't accept my credentials. My name wasn't on the tenant list. My keycard didn't work. Even the concierge looked at me like I was a ghost. I forced my way in behind a delivery guy and took the elevator to the penthouse. Same floor, same door, different plaque, different scent in the hallway, like the entire place had been scrubbed of my existence. I knocked once, then again, no answer. I knew the security override. I'd designed it. Mireille, my mother-in-law, had insisted we install the highest-end system when Leighton and I moved in. "Can't trust the world," she'd said. I'd never imagined it'd be used against me. I bypassed the lock. Inside, the living room was pristine, sterile. Not a trace of me. No photos, no clutter, none of Caleb's drawings on the fridge. My coat rack was gone. My bookshelves had been replaced with designer sculptures I didn't recognize. I stood there, disoriented, violated. "Who the hell are you?" I turned. Leighton stood at the hallway entrance, silk robe tied tight, phone in hand, staring at me like I was an intruder. "What did you do to him?" I demanded. She blinked. "What are you talking about? You can't just barge in here." "Where's Caleb?" Her expression flickered. Not shock, not relief, just calculation. "He's not here," she said coolly, "and he doesn't want to see you." It took everything in me not to lose control. "You told him I was dead." "I told him what I had to," she snapped. "You left. You chose war over us. You don't just get to drop back in and play hero." I moved toward her, not threatening, just enough to make her step back. "I never signed away custody, never agreed to anything. Where is he?" She hesitated, then scoffed. "Ask my mother. She handled everything." I could feel the rage building behind my ribs. Mireille. The same woman who once called Caleb your charity project. The same woman who refused to hold him as a baby because he cried too loud. The same woman who ran background checks on my entire unit before our wedding. And now she had my son. That night, I went underground. I called in favors, the kind you only get after years of loyalty and scars earned in silence. My former intel buddy, Marcus Vega, was the first to respond. 2 hours later, he dropped a thumb drive into my hand at a diner in Queens. "Surveillance footage," he said. "You're not gonna like it." I opened it on my laptop in a rented room. The footage came from internal cameras I'd helped install, meant for family safety. Now they were evidence of betrayal. One file, dated February. Just a month after I deployed. Leighton sat on the couch, sipping wine. Mireille stood nearby, pacing. "He's never coming back," Mireille said. "And if he does, it doesn't matter. I've filed the paperwork." "Do you think Caleb will forget him?" Leighton asked. "He's 8, Mireille replied coldly. "Children adapt, especially when reminded how unwanted they are." My jaw locked. My stomach turned. Another clip. Caleb in his pajamas, clutching a toy. Mireille crouched before him. "Your father's not coming back. He left because you broke your mother. She used to have a career, a body, a life. You ruined that. You are not a Larson anymore. You're a Sinclair now. Understand?" He nodded. Silently. Blankly. Then she stood, turned to the housekeeper and said, "Pack his things. He leaves for Wyoming tomorrow." The screen blurred. Not because of the video, because my vision did. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even sit. I stared out the window of that room, thinking about my son alone in some remote facility, while the people who claimed to love him erased every trace of the only parent who ever protected him. They'd declared war on my blood, on my name. They thought they'd buried me overseas, but I was still breathing, and I was coming back for everything. I didn't waste time. The moment I saw the footage, Caleb's blank stare, Mireille's venom laced with surgical cruelty, I knew exactly what I had to do. They'd stripped me from his life piece by piece. It wasn't just emotional abuse. It was a complete annihilation of identity, mine and his. Caleb wasn't just hidden away. He was erased. I'd been gone 6 months on my last rotation. 6 months where no letters came, no video calls, no signs of trouble, just silence. Leighton had blamed it on deployment interference, operational security, and the usual lines families used when distance became too hard to explain. And I believed her. I had to, because the alternative meant questioning everything. And I didn't want to believe my wife and her mother would do something so vile. But now, I'd seen it with my own eyes. My son had been sent away like damaged cargo, like an inconvenience, and they thought I'd stay gone. I called Marcus back the next morning, told him I needed full traces, legal filings, insurance claims, credit activity. Anything Leighton or Mireille touched while I was overseas, especially anything linked to guardianship, education, or mental health facilities. "I'll get into it," Marcus said. "But heads up, you're about to step into some heavy fog. These women don't move without cover." I already knew that. Mireille Sinclair had influence, deep pockets, generational wealth, ties to political donors, judges, and boards I couldn't even name. She didn't make mistakes. She designed outcomes. By nightfall, Marcus delivered the first bombshell. "She had you declared unfit," he said. Psych eval filed through a private review board in Connecticut, dated 3 months ago. States you were showing signs of combat-related dissociation, potentially violent ideation. What? I nearly dropped the phone. That's fiction. Of course it is. It was signed off by a Dr. Nicholas Frey, works for a consultancy firm tied to White Briar Behavioral. They do elite family consulting. Translation, cover stories for rich people doing morally bankrupt things. White Briar. I remembered the name vaguely. Leighton had mentioned them once. Some posh behavior center in Wyoming that catered to difficult minors and emotionally burdened families. I thought she was joking. "Caleb's there, isn't he? Buried under a false intake name. But yeah, he's there." I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. Caleb, my son, had been hidden in a psychological rehab camp masquerading as a boarding school. "He's registered under Caleb Sinclair," Marcus added. "They've altered his school records, emergency contacts, and guardianship forms. You've been completely scrubbed, digitally and legally." I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly, fighting to keep control. How the hell did they get away with this? Money, silence, and loopholes. They didn't go through CPS. They went private, used your deployment as leverage, claimed emotional abandonment, pre-existing marital discord, and the risk of mental instability due to combat exposure. Leighton had weaponized my service, turned the very thing I did to protect our family into ammunition against me. "They needed your signature for any of that," I said coldly. "Here's the thing," Marcus said. "They have it." What? They used a digital signature extracted from old documents, spliced together using PDF overlays and form data injections. Whoever did it was surgical. Forgery? Beyond that, this was orchestrated. I clenched my jaw. "They filed for temporary guardianship of Caleb through an emergency hearing held in Connecticut while you were still deployed," Marcus continued. "No notice to you, no physical address listed for service. Judge assigned was someone Murray donated to last cycle. The approval was signed in under 24 hours. What about legal recourse?" "I'm already pulling threads," he said. "But if we go in loud, they'll have time to bury deeper. You need leverage first." I leaned back, closed my eyes. The system wasn't broken. It was being used exactly how it was designed, for people like them. The next day, I visited the old family attorney, Jenna Yates, a firebrand who'd once helped me secure sole medical power of attorney for Caleb during his heart scare at age 4. She was one of the few who hadn't been on the Sinclair payroll. When I walked into her office, she stood up slowly, shocked. "Jake? Need your help. I thought you were—" She cut herself off. "Never mind." "Sit down. Talk." I explained everything, from the call to the surveillance to Marcus's findings. She didn't interrupt once, just nodded, her face darkening with every detail. "They filed a legal disappearance," she finally said. "Disappearance? Not literal death, but a functional erasure. If they can prove lack of contact, perceived abandonment, and emotional risk, they can declare you effectively out of the family structure, even if you're alive. It's rare, expensive, and usually doesn't hold long-term. But in elite jurisdictions, it can be done temporarily." Caleb's name was changed. That's the final nail. It's usually symbolic. but it supports the narrative that you're no longer a stabilizing figure. And they didn't even tell me. They didn't need to, not with the judge they used and the false psych review on file. I sat still for a long moment. Can you help me reverse it? Yes, she said, but we'll need more than moral outrage. We'll need evidence, irrefutable, emotional, public. Public. Jake, this won't be won in a closed courtroom, not with their resources. You want your son back? You need the court of public opinion. That night, I watched every minute of the surveillance footage again. This time with intent, not just grief. I marked timestamps, pulled faces, tracked phrases. I noticed something I'd missed before. Mireille wasn't just cruel. She was careful, always alone with Caleb when she spoke her poison. Leighton never corrected her, but also never delivered the worst lines herself. It was layered, structured. Then I saw it, a recorded clip from the dining room, time-stamped 2 days before Caleb was shipped out. Mireille was on the phone, unaware the camera was still rolling. No, he's out of the picture. He signed away guardianship last deployment. Pause. Well, yes, not exactly signed, but we have what we need. Dr. Frey took care of it. Pause. I don't care if he finds out. And by the time he returns, he'll be a ghost to that boy. That was it. Proof of coordination. Proof the documents were forged, and that Mireille was behind it. It wasn't enough for legal reversal on its own, but it was enough to destroy the illusion. I sent it to Marcus. Leak this anonymously, I told him. Push it through a whistleblower channel. Make it look like internal footage from Whitebriar. Attach commentary about guardianship abuse and elite manipulation of family court. Going public already? He asked. Just enough to rattle the cage. Within 24 hours, the footage hit the right corners of the internet. A parenting advocacy forum picked it up first, then a whistleblower subreddit, then a TikTok creator with a massive following who specialized in privileged corruption reposted it with a stitched reaction. It blew up. The comments exploded. This is why children in rich families end up broken. Where's the father in this? Why isn't anyone asking? If this was a man doing this, it'd be front-page news. That's when I knew I had traction. The Sinclairs issued a vague press statement denying false allegations made on social media and citing ongoing family tensions. But they were rattled, which meant they were exposed. The next night, I went to my old storage unit in the Bronx. Hidden behind unused workout equipment and army crates, I found it. The old tactical binder. Deployment logs, letters from Caleb, videos from his birthdays, my legal documentation, audio clips of him saying, "I miss you, Daddy." I loaded everything onto a secure drive. Then I recorded a message, not for the internet, for Caleb. "Hey, buddy," I said, looking into the lens. "I don't know when you'll see this. Maybe not soon. But I want you to know, your dad never left you. Not once. Not ever. I didn't disappear. I didn't stop caring. I've been fighting for you since the day you were born, and I'll keep fighting until you're back where you belong. You're not broken. You're not wrong. You're my son, and I love you more than anything in this world." My throat caught. I paused, then added, "They're not going to get away with this. I promise you that." The next morning, Jenna called. "We've got an opening." "What kind?" "One of the Sinclair accountants just got picked up on tax evasion. She might be open to testifying about the money trail that funded this entire operation. Offshore payments to Frey's group, hush settlements to staff at Whitebriar, donations to judicial campaigns." "Can she be protected?" "She's scared. But she's got a kid. That might be enough." It was always about the kids, the ones caught in the blast radius of selfish, powerful adults. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about Caleb anymore. It wasn't just about me. It was about the system that allowed this. The legal blind spots, the financial levers, the digital manipulation. If they could do this to a combat-decorated father, what chance did anyone else have? Mireille hadn't just underestimated me. She'd awakened something dangerous. I arrived in Jackson, Wyoming just after sunrise. The air was thin, clean, and quiet. Too quiet. The kind of place where secrets are easy to bury because there's no one around to dig. Whitebriar sat at the top of a pine-covered ridge, behind wrought iron gates and manicured stone walls. It looked more like a luxury ski lodge than a facility for difficult children. From the outside, it was all serenity, oversized windows, polished cedar, and a muted sign carved into dark wood, Whitebriar Institute, structured growth through stability. Beneath that was a second line, private, no walk-ins. I parked on a dirt pull-off nearby and sat behind the wheel for a moment, collecting myself. I wasn't here to make a scene. Not yet. This was recon. I walked the perimeter for nearly an hour before I spotted it, an old maintenance trail that curved up behind the loading bay. I followed it until I reached a service fence. A blind spot. No visible cameras, no guards. Classic design flaw. They never expect threats to come quietly. I hiked back down, drove to a motel 15 minutes away, and changed into neutral clothes. No military markings. Nothing to stand out. I kept the burner phone on and left my real one in the car, shielded and dark. That night I returned under cover of rain. My boots barely made a sound on the mossy ground. I scaled the fence in less than 5 seconds and dropped onto soft earth. I made my way to the eastern side of the building, where the kids' quarters were, according to Marcus's internal floor plans. At 2:13 a.m., I crouched beneath a bank of tinted windows. I didn't know which room was his. I didn't even know if he'd recognize me anymore, but I waited anyway. A light flicked on above one window, then a shadow moved across the glass. I stepped closer. That's when I saw it, barely visible through the fogged panel. A small figure, curled under a blanket, then rising slowly to look out. I didn't move. The figure leaned toward the glass, then paused. My breath caught. Then the child reached up and pressed something to the window. A drawing. A scribbled figure in black crayon. Military boots. A tall man holding a boy's hand. Below it, the words, "He'll come." My knees buckled. I had to put a hand on the siding to steady myself. It was him, Caleb. He hadn't forgotten. He'd been waiting. I slipped away before dawn. If I stayed longer, I risked detection. But I left with what I needed. Proof he was alive. Alert. And still believed in me. The next morning, I met Jenna on a secure call. "He's there," I said. "I saw him with my own eyes." She exhaled. "We're close on the injunction. If we can file with emotional precedent and the recent footage leak, the court may issue a temporary reversal of guardianship." "What's the time frame?" "Days, maybe less." "We don't have days. He's not safe in there." "I know, Jake, but we need more. Emotional leverage is good, but we need something irrefutable, medical, educational, or testimonial evidence of harm." "He's 8. How do we get testimony from a kid locked behind a wall?" "We don't," she said. "But someone on the inside might." That's when I thought of Dr. Vienne Ellis. I'd seen her name once, listed on Caleb's early school assessments when he struggled with focus. She was a trauma specialist, not part of Whitebriar's official staff, but contracted for off-site evaluations. I remembered her kindness, her calm way of talking even when Leighton rolled her eyes. I tracked her down through professional directories, sent her a message under a pseudonym, requesting a consult. She responded within the hour. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop in Bozeman, far from Whitebriar's reach. When I walked in, she recognized me instantly. "Jake," she said softly. I thought they told you. They told me nothing, I cut in. That's the point. We sat. I laid everything out, what I'd found, what Caleb had said on the phone, the surveillance footage, the forged documents. Her face never changed, but her hands tightened around her mug. I thought something was wrong, she finally said. But I didn't have enough to go on. Caleb was withdrawn, disassociated. He never mentioned you directly, but he always left drawings behind. Little things. Soldiers. Helicopters. Boots. He never forgot. No, she said. He didn't. Can you help me get him out? She hesitated. You're asking me to violate confidentiality protocols. If I breach that contract, I lose my license. If you don't, a child stays imprisoned for no reason other than convenience and control. She looked at me, hard. I've seen children broken by the systems their parents build, she said. They wear designer clothes, eat gourmet food, live in million-dollar homes. But inside, they're starving for safety. I'm not asking you to go public, I said. Just testify that he was emotionally suppressed, that he wasn't being helped, that he was being held for reasons that had nothing to do with his well-being. She exhaled, long, slow, then nodded once. I'll prepare my statement. That night, I drove back up the ridge. This time, I didn't sneak around. I walked through the front gates, dressed like a visitor, papers in hand. The receptionist looked startled but professional. Can I help you, sir? I'm here to speak with your director, I said. My name's Jake Larson, and you're illegally detaining my son. Silence. Then tension. Sir, we'll need you to step outside. No, I said calmly. You'll call your director, and then you'll tell her this facility is about to be investigated for custodial fraud and child suppression. She pressed a button under the desk. I heard the locks engage. 2 men emerged from the hallway. Security, not armed, but ready. I'm not here to cause harm, I said. I'm here to reclaim what's mine. You can cooperate, or you can explain your obstruction to the Attorney General when this breaks tomorrow. They froze. The bluff worked. I left without touching anyone. But they'd seen my face now, which meant the Sinclairs would know, and the clock had started ticking. Sure enough, less than 4 hours later, my phone lit up. Leighton. I didn't pick up. Then a voicemail. Jake, what are you doing? You're spiraling. Caleb's fine. He's finally stable. Why would you drag him into this just to make yourself feel better? I deleted it without listening to the rest. Next came a call from an unknown number. Mireille. I picked up. I warned you, she said, her voice sharp and sweet like poisoned candy. No. You lied, I said coldly. You fabricated. You erased. I protected him, she hissed. From you, from your temper, your instability. You think parading around in fatigues makes you a father? No, I said. Coming back does. Silence. Then, you'll regret this. I promise you. I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. No, you will. The next day, Dr. Ellis submitted her sealed affidavit to Jenna's office. It was detailed, clinical, and devastating. Subject exhibits classic signs of coercive psychological suppression. Drawings and verbal indicators suggest a persistent longing for paternal connection. Emotional flatlining observed during sessions is consistent with high conflict attachment, resulting from forced separation and narrative manipulation. Recommend immediate removal from current setting. Jenna filed the emergency injunction within 2 hours. We had our hearing scheduled within 36 hours, but that wasn't the part that mattered most. That night, Caleb appeared on a live stream, not directly, but enough to make the world see him. Marcus had planted a trace device weeks earlier through one of the leaked footage sites. Someone inside Whitebriar had clicked the link, and their internal system fed us a time-locked stream of public-facing content, security footage from the lounge area. And there he was, Caleb, sitting alone, drawing. The camera zoomed in. It was a soldier, this time standing in front of a wall, his hand outstretched, a child reaching up, captioned underneath in childish handwriting, "I knew you'd come." It went viral within the hour. TikTok, Reddit, Twitter, YouTube. #BringCalebHome started trending worldwide. The media didn't know the whole story. But they knew one thing. Something was wrong inside that mountain, and people cared. The morning of the hearing, Layton showed up in court with 2 lawyers and sunglasses too large for her face. Mireille didn't appear in person. She sent counsel. I sat alone, just me, and the truth. Judge Hannah Dell wasn't the kind you could buy off. She was straight arrow, decorated, and immune to showmanship. She asked questions. She demanded receipts. Jenna presented everything. Marcus's forensic proof of document tampering, Dr. Ellis's testimony, footage from Whitebriar, the original phone call from Caleb, and Mireille's incriminating audio about making him a ghost. When Layton's lawyer tried to shift blame, Jenna cut in clean. "Your Honor, this wasn't a custody dispute. It was a calculated character assassination. My client didn't abandon his son. He was eliminated from the narrative by force. And the child is the one paying the price." Judge Dell sat quiet for a long moment, then spoke. "This court finds sufficient cause to issue an immediate reversal of temporary guardianship and restoration of paternal custody. Mr. Larson, you are hereby granted emergency access and retrieval rights for your son, effective immediately." My breath left me like a blow to the chest. I wasn't free yet, but I had the green light. That afternoon I returned to Whitebriar with the court order in hand. This time, no bluff, no hesitation. The gates opened. Security didn't stop me. When I stepped into the common room, Caleb was there, sitting on the same couch I'd seen in the footage. He looked up, paused, then stood. His eyes scanned my face like he wasn't sure I was real. "Dad?" he whispered. I knelt. "Yeah, buddy. I'm here." He took one slow step, then another. Then he ran, straight into my arms. He buried his face into my shoulder and shook. Not with sobs. Not with fear, just relief. "You came," he whispered. "I told you I would." Caleb didn't speak on the flight back to New York. He stared out the window the entire time, small hands tucked into the sleeves of a borrowed sweatshirt, eyes tracking clouds like he was watching something disappear behind him. I didn't push him. The trauma was fresh, visible in the way he flinched at loudspeaker announcements, the way he jerked when the flight attendant gently asked if he wanted juice. He hadn't said a full sentence since the moment he hugged me. Dr. Ellis warned me about this. "Don't expect joy right away," she'd said. "Reunification with an alienated parent is complicated. He'll feel guilt, confusion, loyalty conflicts, and fear. Fear that if he gets too happy, it'll be taken away again." I watched him breathe, shallow and mechanical. What the Sinclairs had done wasn't just psychological cruelty. It was strategic soul erasure. And it was going to take everything I had to undo it. Back home in Brooklyn Heights, I had the apartment cleaned, reset, and cleared of every last remnant of Layton and Mireille. No perfume bottles, no inherited furniture, no framed wedding photos in drawers. I didn't want Caleb waking up surrounded by ghosts. I let him choose his bedroom. He picked the guest room, not his old one. When I asked why, he shrugged and said, "That room has too many sounds." I didn't ask what that meant. I just nodded. We were back together, but the damage had roots. The next morning, the media came. It started with a single reporter from an online parenting site camped outside the building, then local news vans, then a national crew. Jenna called and warned me not to comment. Don't give them quotes. You're not here to build a narrative. You're here to protect your son. That's the only story that matters. But the Sinclairs, they played it differently. Leighton gave a carefully curated statement on a streaming podcast 2 days after the court order. She sat across from a host in a beige studio, sipping tea like she was on vacation. Jake has always been intense, she said, her voice syrupy with false concern. We're happy he's back, but this wasn't the environment Caleb needed. He was struggling. His behavior was erratic. His moods were violent. My mother stepped in because I was overwhelmed. Not because we didn't love Caleb, but because we do. The clip went viral. Not because people believed her, but because they didn't. The host's comment section lit up with fury. She's gaslighting the world. He was in a facility, not a summer camp. Where's the father's interview? They wanted my side, but I stayed silent. Instead, I took Caleb to therapy. Doctor. Ellis agreed to continue treating him, unofficially at first. Her license was still under threat for speaking out, but she didn't care anymore. We have an opportunity here, she said after their second session. But Jake, this won't be quick. He's conditioned to doubt himself, to fear stability. Can I stay with him during sessions? I asked. For now, yes, but let him lead. The first session, he said almost nothing, just sat and colored. By the third, he looked up mid-sketch and asked quietly, Will they come get me? Dr. Ellis glanced at me. I waited. Who do you mean? She asked gently. My mom, he said, and Grandma. They said if I ever made trouble, they'd send me somewhere worse. They said they could make me disappear, like my dad. He said it without emotion, flat, as if reciting a rule. I clenched my fists. They lied, I said softly. He didn't answer. Meanwhile, the Sinclairs prepared for war. Their lawyers filed an appeal to challenge the emergency custody ruling, citing procedural irregularities and inflammatory public narratives. Mireille's legal team claimed reputational damage, accusing me of orchestrating a smear campaign built on selectively edited media. They requested supervised visitation rights. Jenna laughed when she read the motion. They think they can flip this narrative by playing victim, but they don't realize they've lost the court of public opinion. They don't care about public opinion, I said. They care about control. Still, the appeal meant court again. And this time, it would be ugly. Depositions, character witnesses, mental evaluations, a full forensic financial audit. They were throwing the book at me, which meant we had to dig deeper too. Marcus found more. Old emails between Murray and Whitebriar's board chair, encrypted but not deleted. Conversations about image management, narrative redirection, and liability containment. One line stood out. He's military. Use that. The public believes trauma equals danger. Paint him as unstable. Do it before he returns. It was dated 3 weeks before I came home. They'd planned it down to the optics. Jenna included it in our countersuit. The next blow came unexpectedly. Caleb wet the bed. It was 3 a.m. I heard rustling, then crying. When I reached his room, he was curled in the corner, wrapped in a blanket, shivering. I'm sorry, he whispered. Please don't send me back. You're not in trouble, I said, crouching. It's just a blanket, bud. We'll clean it up. He didn't move, didn't believe me. He thought he'd broken something by being human. I cleaned him up, changed the sheets, then sat beside him on the floor until he fell asleep again. The next morning, he didn't speak at breakfast, didn't look me in the eye. Shame clung to him like a second skin. And it hit me then. This wasn't just neglect. This was conditioning. They'd trained him to fear normal mistakes. to expect punishment for imperfection. They'd rewired his view of love into something performative and fragile, and I couldn't fix it overnight. But I could start. That week, I set up a routine. Mornings started with pancakes, his favorite. Afternoons, we visited the park. Evenings, we did puzzles, played old video games, read comic books, things that grounded him in now, not in fear. He started laughing again, softly at first, then louder. One night, after dinner, he looked at me and asked, "Do you think they were ever proud of me?" I paused. "I don't know," I said, "but I am." He nodded and didn't ask again. But peace didn't last long. One morning, as I walked him to school, a man stepped out of a black sedan across the street. Camera crew. Mike. Suit. "Jake Larson, is it true your son was brainwashed by his own mother?" "How do you respond to allegations that you're using him to gain custody leverage in a personal vendetta?" I shielded Caleb and kept walking. The man followed. "Sir, there are rumors your military record includes unreported disciplinary action. Can you comment on that?" That stopped me cold. I turned, calm but deadly. "You come near my son again," I said, "and I'll make sure you never work near children or veterans again. You want to run a story? Try one about a child being stripped of his father's name while his mother toured wine retreats and his grandmother coordinated media spin campaigns. I have the files. Want me to leak those next?" He backed off, but the threat was clear. They were smearing me. That night, Jenna called. "They've retained a crisis PR firm," she said. "Harlan Gray. They specialize in reversing narratives. They're going to try and flip you into the villain. Let them try. They've started already." One blog ran a story suggesting you had PTSD-related episodes in Kabul, unsubstantiated but dangerous. Of course they did. Jake. They're desperate. And desperate people escalate. She was right. 3 days later, my building's doorman found a red envelope taped to the front desk. Inside, a single photo. Me, in uniform, at a funeral. Face contorted in grief, scrawled across it, "Keep digging, soldier. Let's see what else you bury." I showed it to Marcus. He traced the ink to a specific pen used by a boutique stationer in Manhattan, one Murray used often, but proving it would be hard. The message wasn't about proof, it was about pressure. But they didn't realize something fundamental. They'd spent years building illusions. Carefully constructed, curated versions of themselves for every audience. But I didn't need illusions. I had the truth, and a child who finally believed he deserved to be loved again. That was the kind of fuel no publicist could match. So I leaned in. We filmed a quiet, simple video. Just Caleb and me. At home, sitting on the couch. He held my hand and spoke slowly. "I used to think I wasn't enough. I thought I broke my family. But that wasn't true. My dad didn't leave me. They made me think he did. And that wasn't okay. We didn't publish it right away, but we let it circulate quietly through support groups, parenting pages, and legal reform forums. And it resonated, because it wasn't loud, it was real." The next hearing was set for 2 weeks later. This one wasn't about emergency custody. It was about permanency. If I won, Caleb would be mine without further interference. If I lost, visitation rights could be reversed, and Caleb might be subjected to a rotating custody arrangement. Jenna prepared the filings like war plans. "I've brought in a forensic psychologist," she said. "He's reviewed the case and is willing to testify on the long-term impact of forced separation and psychological coercion." Will the judge allow it? We'll argue relevance under child welfare codes. They won't deny it without looking corrupt. And if they try, then we go public with the financial trail. All of it. I nodded. We were no longer just defending. We were advancing. The night before the hearing, Caleb asked me something unexpected. Will I have to talk in court? No, buddy. You won't have to say a word. He looked relieved, then quiet. Do you think she'll hate me? Who? Mom. I sat down next to him on the bed. I don't know what your mom feels, Caleb, but what she did wasn't your fault. You didn't break anything. You were a kid who needed love. That's not a crime. He leaned his head on my arm. I just want it to stop. Me too, I whispered. But I promise you, we're almost there. The courthouse was quiet that morning, unnaturally so. The kind of silence that presses into your ears and warns you something irreversible is about to happen. Caleb was with Dr. Ellis, safely across town. I didn't want him anywhere near the drama. Not yet. Jenna met me on the courthouse steps. She looked sharp, calm, collected, but I'd worked with her long enough to read the fire beneath her eyes. They brought extra counsel, she said. Murray retained a federal defense specialist. She's trying to insulate herself. They scared? No, Jenna said. They're cornered, and people like Murray Sinclair don't get cornered without setting fire to everything on the way down. The courtroom was already full. Media were kept out. Judge Dell had sealed the gallery from broadcast. But interest was high. Legal observers, reporters, community leaders, even a few off-duty veterans who'd heard my story through advocacy groups. Leighton was already seated, her blonde hair pulled into a low bun, dark navy suit, perfectly tailored. No expression on her face, just silence and calculation. Mireille sat behind her, flanked by two attorneys and wearing a pearl necklace worth more than most people's mortgages. Her calm was different, icy, poised, but starting to crack, because this wasn't about appearance anymore. It was about control slipping through their fingers. The hearing opened with procedural remarks. Then came our first witness, Dr. Ellis. She testified clearly, professionally, without embellishment. Caleb presented symptoms of disassociation, emotional flattening, and conditioned compliance, often found in children subjected to extended psychological manipulation. She looked directly at the judge. In my professional opinion, Caleb was not placed in Whitebriar for therapeutic reasons. He was placed there to sever emotional ties to his father. Leighton shifted in her seat. Mireille didn't blink. Their attorney objected. The judge overruled. Next came Marcus, testifying as a forensic investigator. He walked the court through digital records, forged documents, altered timestamps, private messages about narrative containment. Then he dropped the bomb. A financial trail from Sinclair Holdings to Frey's firm, payments labeled as strategic PR advisement and custodial transitions. Judge Dell looked up sharply. You're alleging that a mental health evaluation used in a guardianship case was paid for under a PR expense? Yes, Your Honor, Marcus said, and we have the original ledger entries. You could feel the temperature in the room change. Even Leighton's second attorney leaned forward, whispering urgently in her ear. Then came the video. Not the viral footage, not Caleb's drawing. This one had never been released. It was a recorded call Mireille made to a political ally, caught during Marcus's trace of encrypted Sinclair server archives. In it, she said calmly, "He won't fight. He's been gone too long. We'll rename the boy, reset his schooling, and erase Jake from every document by the time he lands. If he shows up, we claim trauma. He's military. People believe they snap. We've seen the statistics." A gasp rose from the courtroom. The judge called for order. Mireille stayed composed, but I saw the muscles in her jaw tighten. She wasn't in control anymore, and she knew it. Then it was my turn. I stood, took the oath, sat down. Jenna asked only 3 questions. Did you ever abandon your son? No. Did you ever agree to sign over guardianship? Never. What do you want today? I turned to the judge. I want to stop being erased. Silence. I want to give my son the chance to remember who he is, without fear. I want to undo what they spent years convincing him was normal. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for justice. Because if they can do this to me, a decorated soldier, a present father, then they can do it to anyone. Then the Sinclairs mounted their defense. And they led with a therapist, not a licensed psychologist, who had briefly observed Caleb during his first month at Whitebriar. He claimed Caleb had dangerous behavioral volatility and required a structured environment. Jenna sliced through him with cross-examination. Did you have any direct sessions with Caleb? No, I observed group dynamics. Did you speak with Dr. Ellis? No. Were you aware that your certification had expired when you gave that report? Silence. Objection. Sustained. Damage done. Then came Leighton. She walked to the stand like she was stepping onto a theater stage. I didn't want to hurt anyone, she began, but Jake was gone. And when he was home, he was intense, unpredictable. Jenna didn't blink. Did Jake ever strike you? Ever threaten Caleb? No. Did you ask for a formal custody review? No. I didn't think I had time. You had time to file false psych evaluations. You had time to refile your son's legal name without notifying his father, but no time to follow the law? I panicked. Did you panic when you took that wine tasting trip to Portugal while your son was being stabilized in Wyoming? Silence. Objection. Overruled. Leighton's composure cracked. And then came Mireille. Her attorneys insisted she not take the stand. She overruled them. That was her mistake. She walked up like she owned the bench, refused to swear in on a Bible, then folded her hands. I have nothing to be ashamed of, she said coolly. My daughter was overwhelmed. Jake was unavailable. I did what any grandmother would do, protect the child. Jenna walked slowly to the lectern. You protected Caleb by shipping him across the country and deleting his father's identity? I shielded him from confusion and instability. Was it your decision to rename him? Yes. It was symbolic. Therapeutic. Was it symbolic when you forged a signature on a court filing? I don't know what you're talking about. We do, Jenna said. And so does the forensic team who authenticated it. The judge spoke up then. Mrs. Sinclair, do you understand that the court may move to file criminal charges for fraud, interference with custody, and perjury? Mireille didn't answer, but the tremor in her right hand betrayed everything. Closing arguments were brief. Jenna's voice was calm but forceful. This case isn't about wealth or image. It's about power used to destroy a child's trust for personal convenience. If we let that go unpunished, we're telling every vulnerable parent that money wins. Leighton's lawyers tried to reframe it as a misunderstanding, a lapse in communication, a family struggle exaggerated by media. No one bought it. Judge Dell recessed for deliberation. I stepped outside and stood alone under the sky. I didn't care about winning anymore. I just wanted it to end. But when Jenna returned, her face told me everything. She ruled. We were summoned back to the courtroom an hour later. Judge Dell read from the bench. This court finds that a pattern of intentional deceit, psychological manipulation, and custodial interference was perpetrated by the respondents, Mrs. Leighton Sinclair and Mrs. Mireille Sinclair. The evidence of falsified documentation, misrepresentation of mental health evaluations, and financial bribery is overwhelming. She paused. Custody of the minor, Caleb Larson, is hereby permanently granted to his father, Jake Larson, with all parental rights restored. Further, the court recommends the immediate opening of a criminal investigation into the fraudulent actions undertaken by the respondents. Mireille closed her eyes. Leighton let out a soft sob. I didn't move. I just sat there, fists clenched, letting the weight of it sink in. It was over. Outside, cameras swarmed. Jenna kept them at bay. Reporters shouted questions. I ignored them. Until one asked, "What would you say to your son right now?" I stopped, turned, and said, "You're safe now." Later that night, I found Caleb sitting on the couch. He looked up. "Is it over?" I nodded. "They can't take you again." He didn't speak for a while. Then quietly, "Does that mean I don't have to lie anymore?" "No, buddy," I said. "Never again." He crawled into my lap and wrapped his arms around me. And for the first time since I'd come home, he slept through the night. The news broke before we even left the courthouse. The headlines splashed across social feeds, parenting forums, veteran support groups, and legal justice communities. Father wins back son after elite family's custody deception, court orders, criminal investigation into heiress and socialite grandmother. The photo they used was from the courthouse steps, me holding Caleb's hand, our silhouettes backlit by a cold New York afternoon. I hadn't even known anyone was taking it. Caleb looked small next to me, but for the first time he wasn't shrinking. We didn't go home immediately. Jenna advised us to lie low. Murray's circle wasn't used to losing, and she expected retaliation in the form of reputation warfare. So I rented a quiet place in the Catskills, just me, Caleb, and some space to breathe. We arrived late that night. I watched him explore the rental cabin, peeking into rooms like he was expecting something to jump out. He ran his fingers over the furniture, the window frames, the hardwood floors. Eventually, he turned to me and asked, "Is this ours?" "For now," I said. "Just for us." "Will Mom find us here?" I knelt beside him. "She doesn't get to find you anymore unless you want her to." He didn't answer, but his shoulders relaxed for the first time since Wyoming. The next morning, I woke to the smell of pancakes. I walked into the kitchen to find Caleb holding a spatula, pan smoking, batter half burnt, half runny. He looked up with a crooked grin. "They're kind of ruined." I took the spatula from his hand. "Doesn't matter. You tried." He beamed. It wasn't about the pancakes. It was the first act of normalcy he initiated himself. We cooked another batch together, laughing, burning half of them, eating the rest with way too much syrup. We spent the next few days like that, quietly rebuilding what had been taken, reading, drawing, sitting on the deck, watching movies late into the night. No questions about courts, no whispered fears, just time. But even in peace, trauma lingered. One night, as I tucked him in, he whispered, "Dad, do you think I was bad back then, when they sent me away?" I swallowed hard. "No, I think they were wrong, and I think you were just a little boy who needed love and didn't get it from the people who should have given it." He nodded, then added softly, "I don't think Grandma liked kids very much." That was the first time he spoke about Murray without flinching. Progress. Meanwhile, Jenna kept me updated. Murray and Leighton had been subpoenaed again, this time by the district attorney's office. Charges were pending for custodial interference, forgery, and conspiracy to defraud the court. Public sentiment had turned sharply. Leighton lost several brand partnerships. Her luxury parenting podcast was dropped by its distributor. Sponsors pulled out within days. Murray's social circle fragmented almost overnight. The very society pages she'd once curated turned against her. "She's toxic now," Jenna told me. "Even the old money crowd won't touch her. Her name's become synonymous with elite abuse of power." I didn't celebrate. This wasn't a victory lap, but it was justice. And that mattered. One afternoon, I received an email from Dr. Ellis. It was a copy of her journal notes, sanitized, professional, but powerful. In one entry, she wrote, "Caleb's progress suggests that security, not structure, is the antidote to trauma. He does not need systems. He needs sanctuary. He does not need conditioning. He needs connection. I read it twice, then once more. That night, I asked Caleb if he wanted to send her something. He drew a picture. Us, sitting on the porch. His arms around my waist, the sun overhead. At the top, he wrote, "I feel safe again." We mailed it together. He pressed the envelope into the mailbox like it meant something sacred. We returned to Brooklyn 2 weeks later. Things had quieted, but the weight of what happened still hung in the air. My building's doorman gave me a silent nod, one of those rare, unspoken acknowledgments between men who'd watched each other survive storms. In the apartment, I unpacked slowly, room by room. Caleb chose his old bedroom this time. "Are the sounds gone?" I asked. And he smiled. "Yeah, it's different now." I didn't press. Letting go of fear isn't a dramatic moment. It's a quiet, private decision to move forward. He made that choice on his own. One day after school, Caleb brought home a class assignment. The topic was family. I prepared myself for the worst. Instead, I found this. My family is me and my dad. We do pancakes and hikes, and sometimes we yell at movies together when the endings are bad. I like that we're the same. I don't miss the other place. I like it better now. Below it, a drawing, stick figures, smiling. He hadn't included Mireille or Leighton. He chose his truth, and I would protect it with my life. A few weeks later, Jenna called. "The charges have been formalized," she said. "Mireille's facing 3 felony counts. Leighton, too." "Are they pleading?" "Mireille's holding out for a PR salvage route, but she's isolated now. No more protections." Leighton's counsel hinted at cooperation in exchange for reduced sentencing. I didn't respond right away. "Jake," she added, "there's a settlement offer." "What kind?" "They're offering to drop all appeals, pay for damages, schooling, therapy, relocation support, in exchange for a sealed record and no public statements from you or Caleb moving forward." I paused. They want to buy silence. They want a clean break. I exhaled. "I don't want revenge," I said, "but I want it to matter. For the next kid. For the next dad." Then we reject it. And we did. The media eventually moved on. There were newer scandals, bigger implosions, but the ripple from our case remained. Parenting groups debated legal reform. Veteran family support programs cited our case as an example of biased custody practices. Jenna even spoke at a national conference on child alienation and the legal weaponization of mental health systems. It didn't change the world overnight, but it started something. And sometimes starting is enough. Caleb's nightmares didn't stop immediately, but they lessened. One night, I heard him cry out, panicked, muffled. I rushed in. He was curled up, breathing fast. Hey, I whispered, sitting beside him. "You're here. You're safe." He opened his eyes, looked around, then nodded. "I know." He leaned against me and fell asleep again without a word. That was the moment I knew the healing wasn't just clinical. It was real. Deep. One Sunday, I took him to the memorial wall in Battery Park. I hadn't gone in years. He stood in front of the names etched into stone, wide-eyed. "Are these all soldiers?" "Yeah," I said. "Some of them were my friends." He nodded, then looked up. "I'm glad you came back." I knelt beside him. "I always would have. I just didn't know they were keeping you from me." He took my hand. "It's okay." I waited. Later that week, we started working on a small project together. It was Caleb's idea. He wanted to make a real book, something to explain to other kids what to do when adults lie. He called it, "The Truth Doesn't Get Lost Forever." We made drawings, Wrote pages. Simple stuff, but powerful. He wanted to donate copies to libraries, kids' centers, schools. So we did. And that book changed everything. We got letters. Dozens at first, then hundreds. From children, from teachers, from parents in custody battles. One father wrote, "I haven't seen my daughter in 2 years, but after your book she reached out to me for the first time." A mother wrote, "My son thought he was the reason his dad left. Now he's asking questions, and I'm answering honestly." We read them all together. Caleb would pick his favorites and tape them on the fridge. "This one's from Ohio," he'd say. "That's where we stopped once, right?" The world was getting bigger for him, but instead of fearing it, he was reaching toward it. I still get asked sometimes, by friends, by strangers, if I hate Leighton or Murray for what they did. And the truth is, I don't waste time on hate. What they did to my son will never be okay. But my job now isn't vengeance. It's building a life strong enough that no one can take it from us again. We moved out of the city 6 months later. Found a house upstate with a wide porch, a big yard, and enough room for Caleb to run, to breathe, to grow. The night we unpacked, he asked if he could hang his drawing, the one of us in the sun, above the mantel. "I want to see it when I come downstairs," he said. So I remember. I helped him tape it carefully in place. Then I looked at him. He was taller, stronger, smiling more, and no part of him looked afraid anymore. The last time I picked Caleb up from school in the city, he didn't sprint toward me like he used to. He walked, not because he was hesitant, but because he wasn't afraid anymore. He didn't feel the need to run from something. He wasn't scanning the sidewalks for shadows or looking over his shoulder for Leighton's voice or Murray's commands. He saw me and just smiled, like it was normal, like I had always been there. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was catching up to my son. We were finally walking at the same pace. When we moved into the house upstate, he chose the bedroom that faced the woods, not the one closest to mine, not the one with the smaller window or the fewer creaks. He said he liked how the trees looked when it rained. I helped him set up a desk by the window where he could sketch, do his homework, or just sit and listen to the wind. He drew often, still, always. But the drawings had changed. No more shadows with claws, no more stick figures in corners, no more silent figures looming over smaller ones. Now it was forests, rivers, and suns with wide yellow rays that reached across the page. Sometimes I think about what might have happened if I hadn't come back when I did, if I hadn't pushed harder, or made noise, or listened to that voicemail from the motel clerk in Wyoming. What would Caleb be now? A kid with a new name, a new identity, taught to fear the truth and forget the father who held him when he was born. But that's not our story. Our story is this. A boy believed what he was told, until one day he didn't, and his father fought the world to give him that choice back. Leighton was sentenced to 6 months probation and 400 hours of community service. Mireille wasn't so lucky. She was indicted on multiple charges, including document forgery, custodial interference, and obstruction. She lost her role on every board she'd ever chaired. Social invitations dried up. Legacy families distanced themselves like she was contagious. She spent her final weeks of freedom at a private clinic in Connecticut, where her attorney hoped she'd be declared unfit to stand trial. She wasn't. The judge handed down a 3-year sentence, with eligibility for parole after 18 months. It wasn't enough, but it was something. The day the ruling came in, I didn't cheer. I just told Caleb, "They can't hurt us anymore." He nodded. He didn't ask for details. He didn't need to. Years from now, Caleb will understand everything. Not the court jargon or the legal filings, but the deeper thing. The silence that lived in him for so long, and the way it cracked open when he was finally believed. I don't want him to carry this story like a scar. I want him to carry it like armor. So when the world tries to tell him what he's worth, or who he is, he'll know better. Because he lived through erasure and came out whole. On Caleb's 10th birthday, he asked to visit White Briar. I was surprised. He said, "I want to see it." "I think I need to." So we drove. The facility had shut down 3 months after our trial. State investigators cited ethics violations, falsified reports, and misused funds. The director vanished from public view. A class action lawsuit was still pending. When we arrived, the gates were rusted and chained. The sign was cracked in half. Caleb stood there for a while, just looking. He didn't speak. Then he said, "They told me I didn't matter here." I stepped beside him. "But they were wrong," I said. He reached for my hand, then turned around, and we never looked back. The book we wrote, The Truth Doesn't Get Lost Forever, became something we never expected. A few publishers offered to buy the rights. We declined. It wasn't about money. It was about voice. And Caleb's voice would never be sold again. Instead, we donated copies to shelters, family courts, and schools across the country. We partnered with a foundation to create a trauma-informed literacy program for kids in foster care and reunification cases. We even held a small reading at the Brooklyn Library where Caleb used to sit on my lap during story time. He stood up in front of 30 kids and read every page out loud. His voice didn't shake. Not once. One night, we sat on the porch watching the sunset. The trees burned gold. The wind was soft. Caleb asked, "Do you think I'll forget what happened?" I took a breath. "I don't think you'll forget, but I think it won't hurt as much someday." He nodded. "I don't want to forget you," he added. "You won't," I said. He leaned into my side. "You're my favorite part." Sometimes we think healing looks like erasing the past, but real healing is remembering and choosing how the memory lives. We didn't erase the past, we reclaimed it. Caleb's past is messy, complicated, and filled with moments no child should have endured. But now it's also filled with truth, with safety, with voice, and with a father who never left, even when the world tried to say he did. This is the story I tell now when I speak to other parents. Do not disappear, even when they silence you, even when they bury your name beneath legal jargon and lies, even when you're made to feel like your love doesn't count. It does, because if you keep showing up, even when you're tired, even when you're erased, even when your child stops believing you were ever there, one day they'll remember, and they'll come back. On the anniversary of our reunification, I found something on Caleb's desk, a drawing. Just 2 figures this time. No words, no background, just him and me, standing together, hand in hand, smiling. Sometimes the deepest wounds aren't physical. They're the ones carved into silence, when truth is denied, when voices are stolen, when love is buried beneath power and lies. But no matter how far someone is pushed into the dark, the truth has a way of finding its way back home. This story isn't just about justice. It's about the endurance of love. It's about fighting for what's right, even when the odds are stacked, when the system fails, when no one is listening. It's about standing in the rubble of what was taken and choosing to rebuild, not perfectly, but honestly. Because when truth is reclaimed, even after being shattered, it becomes unshakable. And in the end, healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering, on your own terms. Choosing your own name, your own story, your own future. Thank you for staying with us through this journey. If this story moved you, please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. We read every one, and if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story of resilience, redemption, and truth. We're grateful to have you here. Until next time, stay strong and stay connected.